right, it's on. Let's do it.
Okay, so we're beginning our first webinar for Mental Health Awareness Month. And I am very happy to introduce our speaker, Gabe Lamas. He's a licensed clinical social worker, works for Citrus Health Network, and he also is an adjunct faculty at the Hialeah campus. Gabe has been working with our students for the past couple of years. He's a liaison, he does counseling, and in his words, I work hard to ensure that students have a positive counseling experience in which they are listened to. I operate from a solution-focused, strength-based perspective in my counseling sessions. I believe every student has strengths and the potential to do great things. So do I. Please do not hesitate to contact me if you believe one of your students may need benefits from my services. I would love to work together to ensure our students maximize their potential. So thank you very much. And I'm going to start preparing the PowerPoints here. We're not going to have any questions until the end of 30 minutes. So after 30 minutes, we will answer any question that you may have under the Q&A area only. So only the Q&A area.
All right. Wow, what a lovely PowerPoint.
It is. It's beautiful.
All righty.
You can minimize the videos. I'm going to wait. See, hold on here. Okay, and you can minimize the video if it gets in your way. Let me go back here. Okay, whenever you're ready, Gabe.
Okay. I see. Oh, that's right. I'm looking at the wrong thing. Here we go. Okay, so I know the title of this event revolves around stress management. I know a lot of times when we hear that, we probably think about the same things that are told to us, go for a walk, step outside, be happy sometimes is what is stated to I'm stressed, which is, very frustrating for me to hear. I don't know about everyone else. But if you really want to begin to work on anything, yourselves, like just start beginning working at anything that involves you utilizing your mind, which is essentially everything. We soon realize that stress is one of those things that gets in the way. And I heard plenty of students tell me that, obviously, well, me too, I don't really enjoy stress. Nobody really enjoys it. And stress leads to a lot of different things such as, anxiety, sadness, you name it. And obviously those are things we would like to avoid, because why would we pay attention to that which comes from stress? I don't blame them for that. And, I tend to avoid it a lot as well. So I like to keep it real, and rather than just share a bunch of strategies that you already know that you can utilize, I try to create something that will help us kind of actually learn how to address the stress, as I wrote right there. I know this is promoted by Medical Campus. So, medically speaking, we don't put a Band-Aid on a wound until we clean it. I'm not a medical professional. Carrie could obviously correct me if I'm wrong there, but I would assume that typically we have to clean the wound. And a lot of times we forget that we need to do this with our mental health too, even though the cleaning process is kind of ongoing. But a lot of times we put a lot of bandages on our wounds before we actually examine them, clean them, think about what's going on there. Because if we're stressed, yes, even if it is just like minor stress, there is something that we can do to kind of address it, to focus in on it. And what I found that a lot of people, including myself, end up doing is that we just put the Band-Aid on the wound, keep going with our work, keep going with our studying. And I found that, oh, we can go back. Let's see. Oh, there you go. I found that what we have to start doing, if we really want to address the stress, if we really want to clean that metaphorical wound, is that we got to first and foremost acknowledge some things that won't be easy to acknowledge, by the way. None of this is going to be easy to put into practice. And if it is, you're probably doing it wrong. because true growth is not going to come easy. It's not going to be comfortable either, but that's probably one of those things listed in what we must acknowledge. So you can view what's stated there, but I'll still read through it. Like I said earlier, we got to remember that working on your mental health is lifelong. It's not like, oh, I'm going to graduate, or after the semester, once my classes are done, I'll work on my mental health. Nah, I mean, you could do that, but you should consistently work on it, because it doesn't really ever end. The moment you stop working on your mental health, the moment you recognize that you probably shouldn't have stopped. And stress, anxiety, depression, lack of motivation, lack of energy, difficulty concentrating, just not want, like, even suicidal thoughts at moments, those are all natural responses if you look at the circumstances in which has produced them, right? When they become severe, when they become kind of life-threatening, when they become like, I can't do anything about it, obviously, please reach out for help. But to experience them on the surface level, those are feelings, those are thoughts. Those are natural. Like, everyone experiences feelings and thoughts, maybe not the same ones, but it is indeed a natural process to experience those things in response to stress, in response to schoolwork, in response to everything. We're not robots, So maybe that's one thing we forget to acknowledge, that, hey, I forgot that I'm a person, not a machine, right? Another thing we gotta recognize is that we can't just turn off our feelings. I know a lot of my students have told me that. They're like, I'm good at turning off my feelings. I'm like, okay, well, yes and no. I guess you are good at that. But it's not like they go away, right? You could maybe you put that's more so pushing them to the side, but you can't really get rid of your feelings, nor should you, because then you can't feel happiness, then you can't experience love, you can't experience all the things that you want to experience. I know some people may be tired of hearing this, but another thing we got to acknowledge is that it's okay to not be okay. I keep saying that because society in general doesn't really approach not being okay by saying it's okay. They approach it by giving a bunch of suggestions, by telling you that you got to do this, you got to do that. How about just saying it's okay to not be okay? Let's just sit with this discomfort. But people don't like doing that, me included. One of the biggest ones, especially, within, I don't want to, I think it's present within all of us, so I don't want to assign gender to it or anything like that, but especially for males, or especially for certain cultures and throughout the United States, really, vulnerability is viewed as weakness. We're taught that if you don't show them your vulnerable spots, if not, that's how they'll attack. And that's like true, maybe like in war, but when we're communicating with ourselves, we got to be open with ourselves. We got to be vulnerable with ourselves, because we're stuck in a relationship with ourselves, which is another thing we must acknowledge. Everyone laugh at my meme. Thank you. Next slide, please. Some other things we got to acknowledge as we begin to be like, all right, I really want to address this stress right here. If you hate your feelings or dislike them, you're more likely to avoid them. We don't go running into things we hate. Oh my gosh, I hate this. Let me go right into it. No, of course not. So maybe one of the first things you got to acknowledge or learn to kind of update or change is the fact that, like, hey, like, I know your feelings, they don't feel great, right? For lack of, not to sound redundant, but if you dislike or if you genuinely hate something, because I have students that tell me, like, I hate my feelings. Gabe, teach me how to get rid of my feelings. All right, yeah, sure, right away. I understand that sentiment because I experienced it too. But if you hate, you will not work on something you hate because you won't give it attention. We tend not to give attention to what we hate. Like, if we don't like something about ourselves, we're probably going to push it to the side. So we kind of have to change the relationship we have with our feelings, because they ain't going nowhere, in case you didn't notice, right? Another thing you got to acknowledge, because a lot of times I know that it's different circumstances for every different individual, but a lot of times we're led to believe that, we really can't change because, that's how my mom's been, that's how my dad's been, that's how my abuelo's been, that's how my grandma's been. Like, that's, my family's always been like that. That's how I'm gonna be. Like, that's me. That's not necessarily true. Literally every single one of my students, I think, is going contrary to what they've been taught, because they're actually expressing their emotions when they were taught not to cry, when they were taught not to express it. So really and truly, you do have the ability. I can't activate it for you, but everyone does have the ability to go contrary to how they were raised. And at times it's extremely necessary if they want to be who they want to be. Because a lot of times people want to be different. then how are they raised? And I ain't saying no in a disrespectful way to those who provided you everything that you had, like as a child and things like that. There's still ways that you can update that, make it even greater. Learn, utilize what they gave you, which is, you know, life, food, all these things, and make a change. Speaking of change is an ongoing process. So we gotta recognize you're on the right track a lot of times when you're trying to change or truly address the stress. If you're getting hit with this wave of like, nah, we're not doing this, not today, nope. That is a good sign, because if it is true growth, it's going to be met with resistance. And something that's super big that I was talking to a student earlier about, and that I recognized as I experienced my own traumatic experience that I didn't want to label as my own traumatic experience, but full disclosure, because I like sharing, please do not, it's okay, right? I am doing okay. But my mother passed away on November 7th, December 7th, 2020. And she is my hero. She still is, right? It doesn't really change. And one of the first things I thought of, because I'm such a dang therapist, is, man, but nah, my students have it worse. I gotta suck this up. Even I do it too, right? Nobody's safe from this. And then I realized, like, no, hold on a minute. This is really important to me. You know, this is someone that I deeply love. I still do. I always will. I'm allowed to struggle with this, right? Sometimes we compare our struggles and then we feel like as if we can't sit with them because other people have it worse. Other people will always have it worse. And when you deal with yourself, if something bothers you, and it's important to you, and that's all it needs to be important with. It might seem inherently selfish, but it's not, because you need to work on yourself. If you're going to be able to be a nurse out there or whatever it is you're going to be, you're going to help people. You need to help yourself before you are able to help other people. If not, that stuff will spill over. So the next thing we must do, it's a lot of acknowledging, I know. Next slide, please. Check your definitions. What does that mean? Well, first of all, I don't know if anyone recognized this, but when the dictionary was created, they didn't really have you in mind when they created all these words, right? They just had them to sit there, insert them into sentences. Little did we know, all these words that really work against us have to do with definitions that a lot of times we didn't really create, right? Like, we're born into the definition of happy. We're kind of born into the definition of success. We're kind of born into this, but we must sit down and reflect. Like, how do I, like, you know, this is going to be a reflective piece for students who watch this at another time. Try to think about the way you define these words. They're pretty important words. Would you not think? You know, how do you define success, right? I have a student who defines success, or whose family defines success, as academic achievement. And if that's the only thing you have within your definition of success, it can get a little dangerous, because what happens when you don't achieve academically? You're not successful? That's not really fair to you. You could be successful even if you're not consistently achieving academically. But we'll get into that a little bit later. But one thing just to think about, as you can see, look at Mr. Bean. He's letting you know, me and Mr. Bean are the same. We define success differently, because I've met some pretty unempathetic, unwise individuals who have the highest of degrees, and they still treat people like crap. So I don't look at them and be like, that's success. I want to do that. No. Anyways, next slide, please. Practice self-reflection. So once you essentially, you know, leading into checking in these definitions, or like trying to recognize these, like where are they created, right? You know, we were born into this world, and we're a product of our environments. I think, not next slide yet, but I believe in the next slide I will touch upon. Oh yeah, it is the next slide. Okay, so we'll keep this one. But essentially, we need to take time. And I know, take time. What do you mean? I have homework. I had this. I have a life, Gabe. Okay, listen, you got to make time. I'm telling you right now, this is easier said than done, I know. But you need to make time to reflect upon these definitions, because a lot of times they, for no pun intended, they define who you are, right? So who and what has contributed to these definitions, right? How does your environment, what happens if you tell your mom or dad, I'm really stressed, I'm anxious? Because I'll tell you a response that I've got: you're too young to be stressed. You're too young to be anxious, right? Because young adults are, you know, they don't experience feelings. You're right. That makes sense, right? If you could see that as nonsense, you can't tell your parents or whoever it is that told you that it's nonsense, then you got to sit down and reflect with it, because obviously they're on a different wavelength. So you need to create your own self-reflection. You need to be like, what have I been told when I express worry? You know, how do you think, you know, I don't know if anyone's in here. I wish I could ask people, like, how do you think the world responds to suffering? Right? Because what I see on social media is people trying to categorize, I don't know if they're really allowed to suffer like that. I don't know if that suffering is legitimate. What is up with that? So obviously you're not going to go out and speak out about your suffering when you recognize in the comment section, it says, yeah, but just, if anyone says, but when you tell them about your suffering, just know that's a red flag to step away. But that's a different story. That's for another workshop. When to step away. I'll save it right here. Someone type it up for me. All right. Next one, please. Next slide, please. Sorry. Thank you, Carrie. Just real briefly, I wanted to share, you know, a little social work, because I'm a social worker, but I'm also a psychology. I also have my bachelor's in psychology. So a little social work and psychology, they merge, they meet together. It's a beautiful thing. You know, a lot of you have probably been taught Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And something that I've noticed is that a lot of parents, a lot of people who raised you, they provided a lot of the physiological needs. But what about everything above? Did they make you feel safe? Did they show unconditional love? Did they treat you with words of encouragement and compliments, or did they kind of correct you with, you know, I'm not trying to go too deep here, but if you need some help with self-reflecting, check out these needs. And I'm not here as an attack on parental or guardians or anyone. They did the best they can, right? And providing those physiological needs to help ensure that you are alive today, right? But you have to recognize that if you were lacking and you didn't really feel safe, right? If you didn't really feel loved, if you didn't really feel that you belonged, then you got to take some time to reflect, because it doesn't mean that you do not belong. It does not mean that you are not loved, right? It does not mean that you cannot be safe. It just may not come from the place that you were born into. And it does not mean that you have to hate everyone that raised, you know, I'm not saying any of that. I'm just trying to more so free your mind, and so that you can learn more about you. Because like, if you want to learn how to manage your stress, you need to learn about you, which is why a lot of times when we try to like manage stress on a surface level, it doesn't really, not that anything's to be solved, but it's not really addressing the issue. What are you saying, Gabe? I'm the issue? Yeah, we are all, we have issues. I shouldn't have said it like that, right? We just all have issues that are kind of more deeply rooted than expected. Maybe some don't think that, but either way, we all have these needs. And then on the left is a person and environment perspective, right? As we begin to self-reflect on like, who has contributed to our definitions? Who has contributed to the way I define love? Who has contributed to the way I see family? Like, you know, these are all the influence. I know it says spouse here, but it's just an example that we got, like the individual right in the middle. Then we got the family. These are kind of like the closest, and it trickles out to the furthest away. But all of these influence us. Maybe not as many as other people. We all get influenced differently. We have to take into consideration, you know, we were born into a family. We went to a school. Maybe we went to church. Maybe we go to work. We pay attention to social media. I know that, right? There's societal norms. Those are fun to discuss if you want to talk about those, right? What are societal norms? That's another presentation. I'll save that as well. The point is that within all of these domains, we are influenced and we have multiple experiences. Let's see, next slide, please. All right, now this is the part that I think, I know, it's a lot of work to do, guys. I understand, ladies and gents. We need to update those definitions if they're working against us. And even if they're not working against us, even if you're looking at this and you're like, I'm good, I got this down pat, make them even better, okay? Because you can consistently improve and update your definitions. You know, when it comes to mental health, we got to avoid absolutism. You know, this narrow-minded black and white way of thinking. You know, like, for example, I'm going to define happy as always smiling. I'm like, okay, well, first of all, it's going to hurt your face. Second of all, it's not very reasonable to smile all the time. Like, it's not fair to you, right? And that's a very absolute definition of happy. Happiness involves a lot more things than that, wouldn't you think? You know, so we have to update those definitions, and more importantly, the way in which we speak to ourselves. I think one of the most important things we have to start paying attention to is how do you talk to yourself after you make a mistake, right? How did your family talk to you after you make a mistake? How does your teacher talk to you after you made a mistake, right? Because everyone makes mistakes. And we love to act like the one who corrects those who makes a mistake so harshly is probably one who has not dealt with their own mistakes. And that's okay. We all got to heal, right? But a big one is like, if I don't learn something real quick, I'm an idiot, right? That we got to update the way we talk to ourselves there, because you indeed are not an idiot if you don't understand something right away, right? That's not fair to you, right? You know, do we speak to ourselves kindly? Probably not. Do we speak to ourselves empathetically? Do we know what empathy is, right? That's why we got to define these words, because maybe at the end of the day, you have to go all the way back to your definition of love, update it, and then ask yourself if you're speaking to yourself with the love that you want to receive, right? Because maybe you were fed love with conditions, right? Like, I'll love you if you do this. I hate to break it to you, that's not unconditional love. That's conditional love. Right? You deserve love no matter what. Call me radical. I mean, I am labeled as radical. You blame me, I'm a social worker. But, you know, I believe in unconditional love. I believe that people could be loved without needing to do anything. Just because they're people. They deserve love, right? So you look at the way you speak to yourself, and it's like, am I acting like, am I speaking to myself with love after I'm able to like finish this assignment? Am I treating myself kindly after I pass this exam, or during the whole time that I'm studying, right? Because it can't be something that you do after something is completed, because it's really not, it's just not fair to you. And you could go debate your pet rock. I'm just kidding. You can debate me all you want. That's what the Q&A is for, really. So we can talk about it some more. But you can see in the picture there that a simple way to start updating your way of thinking, like if you really want to change the way you think, you know, which is according to, you know, cognitive behavioral concepts, if you update the way you think, you can update the way you feel, aka feeling stressed. And then you can update the way you behave, aka stress eating. I mean, I know that's what I do, right? You know, like I love food, right? So that's one of my go-tos. You know, if we want to influence any of those, we need to influence our thoughts. And if we want to influence our thoughts, we need to influence our definitions, because they're included in our thoughts. You know, like I said, success, things like that. So you kind of have to identify those thoughts that are kind of working against you. Of course, this is what I do in therapy when it's a lot harder, and it's not easy to do on your own, right? But a lot of times therapy with me involves just really taking a look at these thoughts, putting them under a microscope, not to judge you, but to more so judge your thought, right? Like, if anything, we got to put the thought on trial. Like, people think that a therapist is going to judge you. I don't really like the word judgment at all, but if anything, you do need to become a judge of your own thought, right? So what's stressing you out is that, you know, you can never complete classwork on time. How do you respond when you don't complete it on time? Right? Well, I mean, I just tell myself that I'm a jerk because I didn't complete it on time once again. Well, then maybe we can start changing the way you speak to yourself. And I can't guarantee anything, but I can guarantee that it will be a longer lasting and more beneficial effect to be able to learn how to speak to yourself kindly above anything else. And then I think the rest can be figured out, because I think mental health comes first. Obviously, I'm biased. But with that being said, I don't even know if there's any questions or anyone else in here, but appreciate those who did listen. But please, I think the last slide is just, let me see, the last slide, I'm already laughing at my own slides. So please, even if it's those in here, if you have any questions about anything I said, you know, that's what I'm here for. Look at that, I even ended early.
Excellent. Well, you did an excellent job. That's excellent. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We're gonna see if anyone has any questions.
So I do see a question there, Gabriel. Can You have access to the question and answer box.
The applause.
Yeah, I did it.
Applause, Gabe.
I didn't mean to laugh at Natasha's question. That was not nice. Forgot my video was on. I know you could tell, Natasha. I'm just kidding. I'm glad that she's asking probably for the sake of others. How do I tell if I'm stressed? Man, that's a good question. How do you tell? I would say a lot of times I would look at the investment of time, you know, like how much time are you investing in like just essentially doing nothing other than thinking about what's stressing you out. You know what I mean? Like how much time are you investing in thinking about like, oh my God, this assignment, and then I have to do this. And then like, so a lot of times kind of to gauge like how stressed you are indeed, it could revolve around the amount of time invested. Also, you know, just physically, you know, you start feeling things physically that you don't like. You know, when your body is feeling something, I forgot where I read it, but like if your body's like, if your body's telling you something, you should listen. You know, like if you're feeling maybe just, I don't know, like tense, you know, it's kind of hard to describe sometimes, even for me to describe feelings. But it's just if your body's feeling tense, it's a different response for everyone. That's why it's a good and difficult question to answer. I think she did that on purpose to me. No, I'm just kidding. But it's just everyone has a different response, like I said. But a lot of times we know that we're getting like stress when we're constantly thinking about it, even if we're doing something that we tend to enjoy. You know, like if I'm playing like Mario Party and I'm over here thinking about work, then I'm like, okay, I need to sit down and maybe take a breather or like actually reflect on this. For me, writing helps me out a lot. That's why. So that's what I'll try to do. But also just if we're experiencing something that we don't enjoy, like a feeling we don't enjoy, it's probably trying to tell us something. Hopefully that somewhat answers it. Any other, well, I just read that question, but I don't know. Natasha, give me 5, 4, 3 stars, whatever you want for my question response, okay?
Here's another question. What do you recommend to deal with stress on a daily basis? Do you recommend any self-help books?
Oh, okay. Yeah, well, I can't help it mainly because she's my like social work idol. But there's a lot of more people who talk about vulnerability aside from Brene Brown. I must emphasize that. But what's the name of the book? Oh my gosh, hold on, let me look it up. But so on a daily basis, one of the best things I can recommend is to really pay attention to the way you speak to yourself on a daily basis. Because if you're consistently stressed, you know, you're also, sorry for that, you're also consistently like probably communicating with yourself or something's going on there, you know. And a lot of people are like, no, I don't talk to myself. Well, I'm like, you probably can begin, right? So one way to like deal with it on the daily is to pay attention to how you speak to yourself, right? I would need to know a little bit more, which I can't, obviously I would, if I'm insinuating that I need to speak to you in counseling, but you know, I would need to speak a little bit more to know what it is. Like if you're able to share like what you're stressed about frequently, but if it's too, you know, intense, it's okay. But whatever it is that you may be stressing about on a frequent basis, try to communicate with yourself about it. Try to break it down through what I was talking about earlier. You know, try to check your definition. I don't mean to repeat what I had already said. It's just the conversation you have with yourself is very important. It sets the tone for everything you do throughout the day. And we all wake up like, even if we think we don't have a conversation with ourselves, we wake up like, oh, let me, you know, brush my teeth or let me go get coffee. Like those are conversations. We can add stuff into that, believe it or not, right? Like, let me go make coffee. Oh, by the way, I'm awesome. Obviously, we're not going to believe that just yet, but like literally we can add things into our daily conversations. Like, hey, I'm pretty grateful for the sky. I know everyone's different, obviously, right? But you can add to things, and you must speak to yourself. If the person who's your biggest like enemy tends to be ourselves, like we need to learn how to speak to ourselves. And also update the relationship you have with stress. Like, you know, if you hate stress, you know, maybe kind of learn to dance with it a little different, because it's not really going to go anywhere because it's innate, right? Part of like, what is it, the adrenal glands, the cortisol. I don't want to get all fancy here, but, you know, we got nurses, right? You know, we need like a certain anxious response. This is a survival response. So we just need to learn how to kind of live with it. Obviously, if it gets to a certain intensity, we can do something different. Oh, gifts of imperfection. Someone could say that in the chat or something. So it's called the Gifts of Imperfection by Brene Brown. That's a good start. for a journey in which you want to, learn how to deal with life in general. That's a really good one. I keep talking about it and I haven't even finished it.